Hey everybody, I wanted to make a video on consciousness and the scientific implications and value of religion, purely based on consciousness and science, however. Even though I do believe God exists and I have my own religious beliefs, I like to make one purely on consciousness and scientific theory, I guess, that I have. Um, Religion, prior to the scientific revolution, was the main force which documented history and human consciousness at that point in that place. Every religion and religious documents at different times had a very accurate hand in displaying what people believed at the time. So many religious documents have very little to do with the actual original doctrine that the religion began with, but it does give us a really good sense of where consciousness was for humans at that time and in that place. I really haven't heard anybody talk about this, but it seems more like if you come at it from a neutral perspective, if you're thinking both the science and the religion, belief in God part of it, if you kind of like take neutral ground in this idea, then we can see that it was really good at determining who humans were at the time and in the places. Um, for instance, when the Renaissance was happening, Dante's Inferno. Um, Now, that's not really considered a religious document, but it really shaped a lot of what Christians think about hell because hell being fire wasn't mentioned a whole lot in the Bible. It was mentioned in the Bible, but just not as much as people quote it nowadays or even the past few centuries. Um, it showed that at the time, many people were grappling with the idea that God was very wrathful and that He punished people for sins that they committed, and indeed punished them for eternity by their viewpoint. If we go back to Judaism during the time of Moses, people were very basic. They needed to be told what not to do. And that's why the Ten Commandments are very concerned with just the basics of what not to do. And there's not a lot of, in Hinduism we call them yamas and niyamas. Yamas are do's and niyamas are don'ts. And the Ten Commandments have a lot of don'ts. Because people at that time just needed to be told what not to do because otherwise they would do it. And if we take it, if we take what happened in the Bible with Moses and at that time and in that place at face value, it does show us that people just could understand the basics, the very basics. They couldn't understand complicated messages from God. And let's jump to Jesus' time. If we take the things that happened to Jesus at face value, then we see that religion reached a point where it was very corrupt. There were people who sold things inside the temple, for instance, and that's why Jesus threw the money changers out of the temple. And at the time, there wasn't really a concept of the afterlife, and Jesus came to kind of, I guess you could say, set the record straight. If we again take it at face value, he came to set the record straight. Like, okay, this is what happens if you do this. You need to fulfill your obligations to God, like the Jews thought, but you also need to be something more than just your obligations to God. You need to seek God in a certain way. You need to have reverence for Him, not just on a societal level of the rituals you perform, but also on a personal level, an internal level that we might call inner Christianity. Now, if we jump to Islam, and we go to when Muhammad was around in Arabia, Mecca, around that area, we see that people at that time and in that place were very idol driven. They thought that gods were literally in idols, that they were literally in the things that people worshipped. And that is like the thing that religions call idolatry, that is literally. and and that's kind of how people existed in the tribes at that time and in that area, is that they literally thought that there was a god kind of inside the idols. Like each idol, there was a god inside. And even if many of them did not believe that there was a literal god inside of it, or a spirit, something like that, inside a jinn, a genie, inside of these idols, they thought that all these different idols represented different gods and different spirits, different Jinai, or however you say it. There's different ways to pronounce it. Genie, Jinai. But, Jinn. But, they thought that each one was a completely different spirit than the next. And there was just hundreds of them, even in Mecca. And basically, Muhammad came to tell people that God was one, and it wasn't about a whole bunch of different gods or a whole bunch of different spirits. It was about God being one entity, one thing that you look up to, one thing that you submit to, and one thing that you worship. And that it wasn't about the pictures, it wasn't about the physical forms of God. It was about showing reverence to the one God beyond forms, the ultimate sense of God. Now, many Muslims won't describe it this way. But I do think that every religion and every spiritual belief system has a piece of the truth. And that's why I studied them all. And in Hinduism, for instance, Krishna, we're jumping to a whole other religion, Hinduism. When Krishna came around, the Kshatriya warrior class was basically had a stranglehold on all the nations in India. They pretty much ruled all the people, all the different castes, all the different kinds of people, with a stranglehold, because they had the martial power to. And Krishna came to not only defeat the bad kings, but also bring circumstances about that the good kings that were also warriors that also ruled would fall as well and die, and their basically their whole lineage would die, so that warriors wouldn't rule India any longer, that there would be a freer system. And that kind of led to priests being in charge. After the warrior caste lost its hold because so many warriors died and their families basically just didn't exist in the same way, and then priests, Brahmins, as we Hindus call them, that they actually gained power in a similar way that the Kshatriyas had, a similar way the warrior class had. And then that's why we go to Buddhism. That's why Buddha came, because the priests, the Brahmins, were hiding that religious and spiritual knowledge and keeping it for themselves, and making people pay for it or look up to them to be leaders, because other people didn't have it. And that's why Buddha, this historical Buddha, there's many Buddhas, but the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, he came because he wanted to show people how to become enlightened and basically how to reach God. Buddhism has become a belief system that basically does not believe in God, but I, based on other sources that I believe that Buddha did believe in God. He just wanted to show people how to reach enlightenment, thus reaching God by themselves. Instead of purely just having faith, you're actually working towards it. You're not just having faith in God, you're working towards God to make that a reality. And that's why Buddha came. That's why he professed enlightenment that one can achieve by oneself. And these are just some examples, the main examples of consciousness and how people existed and what message they needed at different times and different places, and how we can really understand what people needed to hear at the time, and also what they came to believe at the time because they were hearing what they needed, I believe. Humanity had a way of bringing down the divine, and the divine had a way of coming down to humanity where it was most needed. And if you just approach it from a scientific standpoint where we're not even talking about God, then you can see where people had revolutions in understanding, revolutions in the way they looked at the world at these key points in history and in key points around the world. And the documents that came after all of those religions started, or all these different spiritual beliefs started, or all these revolutions in literature started, show how we developed and from what nexuses people pretty much believed from at the time and in those places. And we can really understand a lot about where we came from in ourselves and how our consciousness developed based on how we progressed from these different places that are so well documented, because religion was the only thing that documented things at that time. And I think that if we just look at it from an anthropology point of view, a scientific point of view, we can better understand where we can go, how we can develop from here, and who our descendants will be based on studying our ancestors, and maybe develop ways of thinking that don't rely on the limitations that our ancestors had at these times. And that's basically all I have to say for this video. But thanks everybody for watching, and if you like it, give it a like. If you really liked it, subscribe to me. I produce a lot of videos like this. But this is a topic: consciousness and spirituality, and scientific viewpoint is something I'll make a lot of more videos on in the future. And the scientific viewpoint, I haven't delved into that enough, and the scientific theories behind consciousness, I will delve into that in the future. So look forward to it if you like that kind of thing. Thanks, everybody.